Thanks, Vinay. Thank you, Boman sir, and thank you for everybody to join in today. At F.Stop, we are always excited, and I think with COVID-19, we have a new opportunity in our lives, which is to get connected virtually. And so we have set up this online series of interactions with the most eminent visual artists that you would find in our country. Some of them are there on your screen right now. And just to continue from where Vinay left, a few housekeeping notes. On the bottom of your screen, if you are connected on a PC or a Mac, you will see a bar and there is a dialog box which says chat. And that's the chat box Vinay was referring to. So we are moderating this session. When you want to send a question, you please put the question in the chat box. During the session, please keep yourself on mute, although Vinay already has the control, so he can mute any one and at any time. But just when you don't have anything to say, please listen to the speaker and keep yourself on mute. Please do not make any personal comments on the chat or on the audio. Uh, Please keep your video off so that Saurabh can show his work and the video can actually be without any bandwidth interruptions. Please enjoy the session and do follow us on Instagram. And our Instagram handle is F.Stop Photo. All right, so Saurabh, thank you for making time today. It's really wonderful to have you here on this platform. Starting off this series with you gives us a lot of pleasure. I will just quickly introduce Saurabh, although I would always leave the introductions to the speakers themselves because nobody can introduce themselves better than themselves, right? But Saurabh, it's wonderful to know that at one time, you were having a full-fledged mechanical engineering career, and he picked up a camera in 1998. So from that time till 2013, I think it was a hobby for him. In 2013, he finally gave up the full-time job and converted the hobby into a company called as 50 Media Productions. He's also an author, and he's compiled a book, a coffee table book, which is called Visual Poetries, and which is also his ID on Instagram. So I think what he wants to say in the book, as well as in the pictures that you're going to see, is that nature has its own ways of showing itself off, and it's how you see it, and it's how Saurabh sees it today that we are going to enjoy the most, because he's basically looked at nature from the eyes of a fine art photographer. So over to you, Saurabh, and if there's anything else other than the fact that you are a good Jew as well, you're staying in Surat, which is not very far from Ahmedabad, and we would not have, had it not been for COVID, we would probably not have got to you so soon, right?
Yeah,
So thank you very much, Saurabh, and over to you. If you have any technical difficulties, please let us know.
yeah. No, I'm good to go. First of all, thank you, F.Stop, for letting me here. And thank you, Devang, Ashit, especially Vinay and Bowman, sir. Hello, Fauzan. I know a lot of people here, but I'll straight go to the presentation. Okay, so as Devang has introduced me, let me just share my screen first. Okay. Uh, So today I'll be talking about fine art and creativity in nature photography because most of the time in nature photography and wildlife photography, when these two terms come in somebody's mind, people generally think about, okay, there must be lion eating a deer or maybe two tigers are fighting together in the forest and all. But I guess looking at the nature and wildlife should have a very different perspective, and that is what I believe. I mean, so today I'll try to elaborate my thought process behind making images in nature. So, what are those purpose of making images into wildlife and nature? See, there are different purposes of making images. Somebody do it for hobby, for somebody it's a profession, somebody do it for research. There are people who do it just for leisure time activities and all. Nowadays, it's a passion kind of thing also. A lot of people just do it for social media, nothing else. So there are so many purpose of making images into nature. right? But when it comes to a photographer, a serious photographer going into the forest and making images, he should have a vision and purpose both together. And the mix of this vision and purpose probably will end up in a good image. Okay. So what is the first impression when it comes to wildlife photography is probably this kind of images. Either it's a lion, leopard, tiger, and all those things. So big cats always attract people when it comes to wildlife and nature photography. But guys, the thing is that a lot of people, when they go to the forest, when they do not see leopard or lion or tigers and all, they often come out of the forest saying कुछ नहीं है इधर कुछ नहीं है वो अमिताभ बच्चन झूठ बोलता है गुजरात में लायन है ही नहीं all those kind of things. But believe me, why do not they see nature from different perspectives? A lot of people ask me one question, sir, हम लोग कहाँ से शुरू करें? From where should we start shooting nature? You can start shooting nature and wildlife from your balcony. Okay. So if this is the only impression of wildlife photography, but guys, this is also wildlife. This is just a centipede, probably, or this image has been made near the roadside. So this is also wildlife. So if you're a wildlife enthusiast, you have to open up your mind. You have to change your perspective, how you look at wildlife. Wildlife is everywhere. It's all around you. I mean, if you're standing in your balcony, you can see wildlife. So don't afraid if you are not able to go somewhere else to make images. You can always shoot wildlife from wherever you are. It is just how you look at it. Okay. So then, when I say that I'm a nature photographer, a lot of people have this question: what is the difference between nature and the wildlife? Okay. See, nature is a wider gamut, and wildlife is little narrower gamut. When it comes to wildlife, it is only about flora and fauna in the forest. But when it comes to nature, nature has its own definition. Nature, it means anything which is there without an influence of human being. So it is rocks, rivers, mountains, everything is nature, and wildlife is a part of nature. Okay, so nature is a wider gamut, wildlife is little narrow gamut. So I always say that wildlife is a part of nature. Okay, so I always consider, and I generally do not shoot only the portraits of lion, leopards, and tigers. I like to shoot animals in their own environment. I like to include their habitat. I like to include the beauty and brilliance of the graphics which is presented by the nature around the animal. So I always call myself a nature photographer, where animal, which is wildlife, is a part of it. Right. So this is what I understand by nature photography. Okay. Nowadays in our country, there are a lot of people, those who are, falling for nature photography or wildlife photography. So I always consider three species into wildlife photographers. The first species, I call them that they have a collective instinct. When they have a collective instinct means they always play with numbers. I have shot 1,000 species of bird from the country, or I have been to all seven continents, or I have species from Himalayas, across the Himalayas. So they have the collection. They always talk with the number. Correct. So no matter good or bad images, but they have a number. So they are collective species. Then there are people who are very selective. If I have to take some names of Dhritiman Mukherjee and all, they are very selective with their subject. They are like, okay, I want to shoot snow leopard, fine. I want to shoot male snow leopard, okay, fine. When it is in the snow at the evening with a golden background, they are very selective at the regards what they want. They want some rare species which not everybody has seen before. So they want to explore things in a different level. So I call them selective species. And third species जिनको बीबी घर से बाहर नहीं निकलने देती, I call them creative and fine art photographer. उनको घर के बालकनी से सब्जेक्ट ढूंढना शुरू करना पड़ता है. So today we are going to talk about creative and uh, fine art photographers. Okay. So if you see this image is also taken near a bridge where you can see a mena sitting in a flood hole. So these kind of images I call they are creative because they do not belong to the common stream subject. They are different. I mean, so when I went to somebody and I said that I'm a wildlife and nature photographer, I showed them couple of my images And at the end of the conversation, the fellow asked me, "Acha, ye sab to theek hai, thoda wildlife bhi dikhao." So I said, "This is wildlife." It is just how we have to take it. So this manna is also wildlife, and today we are going to talk about some other perspective. So let's start. So I guess I've been set up a context here, and I'll go take it further. Okay. So in wildlife and nature, there are two things. One is beauty and one is reality. Correct. It is there in a lot of different kinds of photography. Beauty and reality are, I mean, probably those who are shooting live, those who are shooting portrait people, travel photographers, they are also would believe in these two terms, beauty versus reality. So, for example, this is a portrait of a snow leopard in Spiti Valley in Himalayas at around 16,000 feet altitude. So, I consider this image as a beautiful portrait. So, for me, this is beauty. The another portrait I would like to talk about. So this is a snow leopard crossing the Spiti River itself. It's a very rare image. Both these images are very rare and acknowledged on very different, so many other different platforms. But these two are, I consider these two images are beautiful images. And one more image from the same region is the image of this ibex, the male and female ibex walking in the beautiful snowfields is probably a beautiful scape to me. But when it comes to reality, I guess the reality of this place where ibex and snow leopard both prevails at the same habitat, this is the reality. But I don't consider this image as a beautiful picture. The first three pictures that we have seen, they represent the beauty of a snow leopard, beauty of the habitat, beauty of both the animals where they live. But ultimately, this picture shows the brutal reality of that place. So it is up to the photographer that what do they want to capture. So there are two things. When it comes to reality, most of those images I consider like a documentation. They are informative. When it comes to beautiful images, probably they are less informative. So for example, where you could see just the face of the snow leopard, that's a beautiful picture, but it does not give you the information वो कहाँ पे खड़ा है, where it is, what is the location, and all those things. So beauty and reality. So I have picked up beauty against reality. See, it is always there. See, most of the award-winning images when you see, I mean, on internet and everywhere, all those images belongs to war and all. So same thing is there in wildlife also. When if you type most powerful images on Google, you will find 90% images comes from the war fields. They are not coming from some beautiful places. So when it comes to powerful images, it is like man killing a man, animal killing an animal. I don't know why beauty is not as powerful as reality. So I'm trying to put my word forward that sometimes you can portray beauty which is more powerful than just the reality. See, we have been watching so many things on internet about information. We have Discovery Channel, Animal Planet. We have now Netflix and all where you can see a lot of series which gives you information. But where is the beauty into it? So that is what I am trying to portray: beauty against reality. So what are the myths which makes which is there in a lot of people? So a lot of people think that acha, if you want to make a fine art image, make it black and white. So black and white image is considered as fine art image. So sorry guys, I don't believe that converting your images into black and white it means fine art. No, I don't think so. See, a lot of people have that liking towards black and white images, but black and white image is not a fine art image. Okay, it is just that the liking, it's a personal choice that you like those gray tones more than the colors. Okay, but this is a myth that converting your images will make it creative or black and white. It is just the black and white or monochrome presentation of your color image. Second myth, which is there in a lot of people, that if you want to make a fine art image, make it blur. So if you'll blur your images, it has a different depth of field, some abstract depth of field if you are using, it will make your image fine art. I would say no. That is also not right, that converting your images into black and white or blur images or some abstract images. Abstract, those who want to capture the abstract, they always have that frustration that not people are not getting those abstracts. Okay, so blur and black and white images are not just fine art images, they are just creative, nice images where people like the presentation either in monochrome. So I always consider that most wildlife photographers are creatively challenged. Why I call them creatively challenged? Because when it comes to seeing the scenario, they see only the animal. They're not seeing the habitat. So if you really want to create a difference in your images, we have to understand and we have to learn how to understand the habitat and the brilliance of the graphics around the animal. So I this was a scenario when I was in Tanzania shooting lions there. So everybody had the 600 millimeter long telephoto lenses, and everybody wanted to capture the lioness sitting on a tree, which is a quite a rare moment for this. But when it comes to me, I refuse to use my 600 millimeter long telephoto lens, and I made image like this, which tells me the story of habitat. It tells me how difficult it would have been for this lioness to climb this tree. So if you see this image, previous image, it just tells the story as if the lioness has been quarantined. Sorry, I'll refrain myself talking about corona. But this is like just a portrait of a lioness. But this image talks about the overall habitat, the situation, and everything. So we have to understand how to give an appraisal to the habitat and not just to the animal, which is beautiful. So first of all, we have to understand this thing. Okay. So now what is the step zero to achieve creative or fine art images? What is step zero? Step zero is, guys, unlearning. Unlearning is very important. Correct. Suppose if I give you an example of unlearning, because see, we have a lot of thoughts in our mind, a lot of influence that we have in our mind. If I have to give you an example, if somebody is asked to imagine a landscape, जब बचपन में छोटे थे, drawing teacher used to give us landscape. Correct. So everybody used to draw only two mountains. Third mountain is not allowed. The river comes only from the center, from nowhere else. Sun comes exactly from the center. उसको sun rays एक बड़ा एक छोटा, only two clouds and few birds, one house and a tree. So this used to be the general identification कि भाई landscape ऐसा ही होता है. You cannot change the landscape. If you put third mountain, teacher will give you 2 marks less than everybody else. So this is what have been taught to us. If landscape, this is the only way you have to draw the landscape. So we have to unlearn what has been, what has been installed in our brain as a first step. So if you have seen a little run of Kutch and great run of Kutch, in those places, very beautiful places in Gujarat, Amitabh Bachchan keeps on saying, "Kuch din to guzaro Gujarat mein." So if you come to Kutch, the landscape would be like this: white run and the sun. There is no other thing, but this is also the landscape. So we have to unlearn the things which is there in our mind. So I always ask people that you guys should scrap your first thought. So when you are in the field, when you see the scenario, suppose if there's a beautiful spotted deer crossing the railway line and the beautiful golden light is falling on it, okay, probably everybody would capture the same image. But what if we can think little different out of this? So this is the first thought that comes to our minds. I always keep saying that we have to scrap the first thought. Can't we capture the same animal like this? I call them the blessing, the hands of Buddha. Same animal from the from the same scenario, I can see hands into its antlers. So in this deer, I can see hands there, but everybody else probably would see a deer standing in a golden light. So this is what I call the art of presentation that we need to learn. How we basically scan the scenario which is there in front of you, and how you pick up the frame from the whole situation where you are. It is just we need to learn how to see the things. So this is art of presentation, and moreover, it is art of seeing. We have to learn art of seeing the thing which is there in front of us, right? So this is like another example of scrap, how to scrap your first thought. So this is a beautiful lion image, but okay, if everybody who is there in front of this lion who have this 300, 500, 600 millimeter lens, everybody would probably get this image. But what if you change your location from that scenario? You go to a different place. So when all the other gypsies were standing there, I asked my driver, okay, chalo yahan se, I want to place my gypsy in a different way. The image I received from nature was this, right? So rather than the simple portrait of that lion, I have these kind of images. I always try to put some graphical values around the animals, and that makes it very interesting. See, if you try to imagine, I mean, lion photographs. There are millions of lion photographs from Africa and from Gir National Park. There are 1 million, 3 million. There is nothing new about lion portraits. So how can you make a difference? I always used to tell my Zabibi whenever I go to Gir National Park, everybody asks me, so इस बार क्या लेके आने का मतलब है? क्या लेके आओगे वहां से? I always tell them, इस बार तो मैं lion को आइसक्रीम खाते हुए खींचूं. Because everything has been seen and done. There's nothing left. So the first thing that we have to learn is do not do not see the scenario only from the telephoto lenses. Try to use smaller focal length if you have. Okay, because by clicking lion portrait, we are just among those few million people who have captured the portrait. But probably this image is very different from other lion portraits. So now, if you have unlearned what is there in our mind about the portrait photography of animals, the step one is it has to be unique. How can you make it creative? It has to be unique. It should be original. It should be imaginative. It should be different. Okay, these are the three words that can make your image unique. So if you take an example of this image is taken from my own city. I was working with Larsen and Toubro as an engineer. There is a bridge on the river, so I captured this image from top of the bridge. So it is very different image which we have seen of bird photography. Correct. So generally we go to the riverbed, we get our clothes dirty and all, but I tend to capture this image from the top of it. So this is a different angle, at least a different angle of a common species bird. Correct. So step one is try to make your images unique. And this is another example of bird flying. Correct. Original, imaginative, and different. So first step is original, imaginative, and different, which is not seen, which has not been seen, and which has not been done before, should be your image. Step two is, suppose if you have made an original thing, if you have done very different thing, but guys, you have to understand it should have aesthetical values also. Okay, it is different, fine, it is imaginative, original. But what if it does not have aesthetics? What if people do not find it beautiful? Correct. So your unique image has to be impressive. Always remember our viewers are the part of our image. If you don't have viewers, what we'll be doing with our images? So your unique image has to be beautiful and aesthetic. And the third word I'm taking is it has to be deliberate. You cannot sell your mistake on the name of creativity. Oh, you get an image with the wrong shutter speed, you get it blur, and then you put it in your creative fine art folder. अच्छा blur हो गया, इसको creative वाले में डाल दे. So it has to be deliberate. You should have the vision when you're there in the field. Okay, so first your image has to be unique. Second, your image has to be impressive. Means it should have either beauty or aesthetics, and it has to be deliberate. So this is step two. Correct. So if you cannot go into the forest, these are the two images I find. See, I have refrained myself for putting images from Tanzania and Kenya and Himalayas and all those places because I want people to learn click images into their city. Wildlife is just there. You do not need to climb 14,000 feet, 15,000 feet every time to get images. Correct? So unique is the first step. It has to be impressive. It is the second step. So what is the third step? if you have a unique picture, if your image is impressive, you should probably find it intellectual also. Intellectual means it should have something to talk about. Say, for example, these are the two images of snow leopard. The image you can see, which is a vertical image on left hand side, this image probably has been published into more than 200 or 300 different magazines and newspapers and news channels. Why? Because people found it so amazing because they were not able to see the leopard there. Correct. So the thing is that though these two images, you can probably find it on my Instagram profile or on my website. But both these images are more intellectual because both these images talks about how nicely snow leopard gets camouflaged into its habitat, right? So these are the two images which I found little intellectual. When people can think about it, people has to stay there in front of the images. Correct. So your images has to be unique, they have to be impressive, and they have to be intellectual at the same time. Correct. So these are also two images which are probably more intellectual. A lot of people were very happy when they saw flamingos coming to our city. But guys, we have to understand why these flamingos have come to our city. What is the reason you can see flamingos in our city? Correct. So I have tried to capture this image when flamingos are flying across the building, and there is a bird sitting on some on a constructed under construction building. Correct. So step three is like your images has to be intellectual. Now step four, which is very important, if you are a fine art or creative nature photographer, your images must have an emotional content into it. It should have some philosophy, it should have some expression, it should have some metaphor in the subject, right? So if I have to give you an example, how we can put and how we can indulge into an emotional content. So this image, when hyena mother is carrying a deer in its mouth. Okay, we have to understand when it comes to hyena. Hyena is a creepy animal. It's like everybody has a different perspective. Specifically, after seeing the Jungle Book movie, everybody think that okay, hyena is a dangerous animal. It's a creepy animal. But there, hyena is also a mother. Hyena also has cubs and all. So I wanted to portray the mother. So I refrained capturing this image when you can see tone of deer and blood shells and everything, because this will kill the value of motherhood in the image. So against this image, I submitted my image to a magazine like this, because in this motherhood is intact. So this is how we can think about emotional content. In another image, when I say emotional content, see, it is very human thing. So this image, if you see, there is a motherhood in the image. You can see a baby monkey holding its mother. Correct. So probably without portraying what animal it is and what it is, what situation it is, if if we have some philosophy which can be connected to the image, probably it is an emotional content, right? Emotional content can be funny also sometimes, like this image. This is also motherhood. The image we had seen was also representing motherhood, and this image is also presenting the motherhood, just in a funnier way. So whenever we are saying emotional images, it does not mean very heavy images. It can be light-hearted images also. So guys, another thing that these are the four steps. So your images has to be unique, they have to be aesthetical, they has to be intellectual and emotional. So that will lead you to a fine art nature photographer. Now, a lot of people talk about the popular guidelines. I've seen a lot of wildlife photographer saying rules of composition. I don't know what are those rules of composition. If everybody would follow the same rules, everybody will end up making the same images. So I generally have a tendency not to follow those, everybody said, Array, this image is wrong because it is not a rule of third. I guess why you want to follow rule of third every time? Sometimes good symmetry can give you good image. So try not to follow rule every time. I'm not saying do not follow them at all. They're just thumb rule, they're just guidelines. Do not get obsessed with those guidelines. Just try and make good images, and it's okay if you do not follow those thumb rules. Okay, like this image. I call this image as a elephant with a lion tail. Correct? Can you see the elephant there with the tail, which looks like a lion's tail? Correct. But the overall scenario was very different. It is from the same lioness which was sitting on a tree. I have captured this image and I titled this image as lion-tailed elephant. Correct. So this is how we perceive the images. And about this image, subject cannot be the physical property every time in your image. In this image, there's a wildebeest image. If you have any idea about wildebeest, wildebeest belongs to the speed. They are always running, because if you understand about the great migration which happens from Masai Mara in Kenya to Serengeti in Tanzania, we have always seen this animal running here and there. So I decided to capture wildebeest as a slower shutter speed, because wildebeest belongs to speed. Correct. So this is a wildebeest image, and I don't want to. And there are hardly few images of wildebeest standing still. So this is the image of a wildebeest running. So there's a fourth element, which is speed is there in the image. So this image is more about the speed and not about just an animal, how it looks like. So what are the subjects in creative and fine art and nature photography? In fine art and nature photography, subjects can be peace, flow, happiness, calmness, darkness, poetry, wind, sadness, emptiness, harmony, music, joy, noise, values, so many things. Just it cannot be just lion, leopard, tiger. All these words can be your subject in nature photography if you're doing, or if you're trying your hands on creative and fine art nature photography. But you have to remember one thing: on the name of creativity and fine art, we cannot play with the colors and the naturality of the element and the subject. We cannot change the naturality. So now honesty between the creation and artist is must. You always have to remember what you have captured, you are presenting it as it is. We are not touching the natural element of it. I've seen a lot of people working a lot on Photoshop, and I always request them not to work so much on Photoshop, not to dependent on so much on Photoshop, rather make more time, spend more time in creating the images than just working on Photoshop. So make sure what you are presenting has a truthfulness into it, because it is wildlife and nature. If we are changing the colors and gradients and putting some filters and all, we are probably trying to manipulating the natural element into it. So that truthfulness is always important. So I always say we cannot sell our mistakes and imperfections on the name of creativity. If you want to click a blur image, it has to be deliberately blur image. It cannot be just a mistake. If it has some metaphor or a philosophy, it should come to your mind when you are there in front of the subject, and not after coming back to the place and you're thinking, "Acha, ye iske jaisa dikh raha hai. Acha, uske jaisa dikh raha hai." It has to have a strong viewpoint when you are making those images. So don't put your mistaken images or imperfect images on the name of creativity. Okay. People must like the image is irrespective of the subjective importance. Say, for example, this is the image of a mosquito. It is just the image of a mosquito, but not everybody is seeing mosquito here. The center of the frame, mosquito is sitting on the water surface, but still your image should be beyond the subject. It should be beyond the subjective beauty of it rather than anything else. Okay. Even in this image, I mean, it is about the bird. It's a griffon vulture flying in Himalayas, but still this griffon vulture is in a habitat where you can portray it with a very different backdrop rather than just the close-up of a flying bird, right? So creativity has nothing to do with the rarity. A lot of people think that, okay, if you capture a rare image, a rare animal into your image, it's a beautiful image. No, not at all. If you think about a great Indian bustard in Great Run of Kutch in Gujarat, it's an ugly looking bird. Take my word. But it is a rare animal. It's a rare bird, I mean. And because it is rare, a lot of photographers are behind these kind of birds which are rare, or those kind of animals which are rare. So if you can, if you can fuse rarity and beauty together, probably you would end up making an award winning images. Rarity and beauty both together in one image is probably an award winning image for me. So not just rarity is important and not only beauty is important, right? It is just how we take it. So we should try to create something very uncommon from a very common subject. So this is the image of a very common phenomena, but this image is very uncommon because it has won image of the year in certain websites and forum because it is creative nature photography. It has no tiger, no lion, no leopard. It is a very common phenomena we have been seeing all around us. It is just how we have perceived it. So guys, simplicity is the classic example. I mean, do not try to complicate your images. Try to make it simple. Do not try to complicate your images with lots of different elements all together in one frame. If you can make it nice and simple, nothing like it. Nothing like it. Correct. So always remember that simplicity is a classic thing when it comes to creative nature photography. Okay, do not try to make it so complicated. Okay, the scenario is such, it's okay, but if it is not required, don't do it. So guys, now we can start discussing about any questions and queries if you have, or if you want to, if you want to share anything about this presentation, we can take it further from here.
Thank you,
So
Saurabh.
Devang.
I'll just step in. Yeah, thank you. That was one. I think, yeah, thank you, Woman sir. But I think everybody can clap. It was amazing.
Thank you.
I have a very long list of questions, but in terms of time, I think we may just be able to do justice to
Yeah.
a few of the questions. Just a note to all the participants. I have your names. I have your questions. When I ask the question in your name, please, you can start your video so that Saurabh can see who you are, and maybe you can raise your hand. And before I start the questions which we have from the chat, I would like to give the floor to Mohan sir and Fozan sir to ask a few questions if you have, and that will really help getting started with the question answer session.
Bowman, first you go.
I'll go first. First of all, I was enraptured, like flora and fauna myself. I wanted to ask you a question about what you say, something that happens by mistake. Um, if it is, I think, in my opinion, if something happens by mistake, and if you are in the moment, and I'm talking to you right now as an actor more than a photographer, or in any creative field,
Yes. Yes.
sometimes something happens on screen which turns out to be magical. Do we say that no, that was not pre-planned, so we should not use it? Number one. For
Okay.
example, if you had seen the famous film Jaws, if you've seen this
Yes.
famous film Jaws, there's this character called Roy Scheider comes back and says these classic lines when he sees the shark. Again, I'm talking about because there's wildlife involved all over there.
Yes.
A
Yes. Yes.
shark, okay? And he says, and he comes stunned like that, and he comes backing into the screen. From there, he comes backing into the screen and he says, "We're going to need a bigger boat." Now, that was not in the script, but it's become a classic line, and it happened
Yes.
by mistake. Uh, my point is, he improvises because he was truthful to the moment. So should we
Correct.
accept, if we are truthful to the moment, that a mistake sometimes is a gift for your hard work? Questions.
Yeah. See, I mean, it is quite possible that at some time we get very good images just by mistake. What you have just given a classic example of this line. So sometimes we definitely get such images, but it is just truthfulness between the art and the art, what he is artist and the artwork. See, it has to be presented very nicely then, or it should be presented as it is. It's not that sometimes it is fine, but what if it happens so many times? So that is the
So
only
what?
case. I mean, yeah,
It's your hard work. So what? Is there a rule book? That's what I'm asking. And I'm saying it with
yeah,
great respect.
yes, sir, yes, sir. I mean, I'm also see what happens is, if suppose if I get a slow shutter speed image, which is quite very blur and all, and I put it just as an abstract, okay, it is fine, but it was basically a mistake of an artist. So I sometimes, I mean, they put it in a way that, oh yes, I saw it that way. I mean, it is the truthfulness
That's
of
different.
presentation has to be there. Yeah, probably.
Understood your answer, sir. Fauzan
Yes,
sir,
sir.
Yeah,
aap boliye.
thanks. I really enjoyed watching the images of wildlife, which, as a documentary photographer, one never guessed or one never paid attention to. And after seeing this, I also saw a new perspective to the entire nature, as you said. My one small question is: do wildlife photographers take up this profession and learn on the job, or is there a serious place where one can learn on this subject?
Okay. So thanks,
Because I
Fauzan.
teach at 3 places,
Okay.
and I don't think anybody has taken this subject seriously, the institutes. So where does one seriously get into this? So I can just for the better for you know you learn documentary, you learn fashion, you learn still life, but one has never come across a school or a place where somebody can teach you in-depth wildlife.
Yeah. See, honestly, that is the paradox of our country that we do not have a full-fledged wildlife photography school or full-fledged, probably we don't have even 6 months course for wildlife photography. Honestly, we don't have. See, there are a lot of people who have been conducting workshops on different topics of wildlife photography, but there is no full-fledged course, or I have not heard of any institute those who have been taking it so seriously that okay, by wildlife photography is a subject, and you have to study this subject for probably 6 months or maybe a year or so. We don't have such institute. That is one thing. Second, when you're talking about wildlife photography as a profession, see, most of the professional wildlife photographer we have in our country, I'm not talking about any other country because our country has a very different kind of economical and social structure. Correct. We have wives and kids and all the social responsibilities on us. So I mean, I cannot at least ask my wife to be there in the field for 265 days. So being a full-time wildlife photographer is always a very big task in our country. It is just that is the reason that I am running small media production company where I do live, I earn my livings. And for wildlife photography, I have a couple of tie-ups with different companies in India and abroad. For those companies, I work and execute projects. Correct. So, I mean, that is very important. Another thing is that interest in nature is also very important. I mean, see, there are a lot of photographers who like to do wildlife, but they are not nature lovers. So they are photographer shooting things in wildlife or in nature. So that is also I was involved into a lot of nature education and conservation activities with an NGO. So I had an opportunity to observe the nature from a very close distance. So that love and affection was there, and that is why when I picked up a camera, I started shooting wildlife in nature and not fashion and other things. Okay. So converting into the profession, we need a lot of money. I mean, we know, all of us who are here, we know the cost of the equipment and the money that we spend to be there in Himalayas for 30 days for one expedition. Luckily, now I have my all expeditions sponsored by certain companies. But just before 3-4 years, I was spending all those money, and for that I was earning from some other field, and I was investing into wildlife and nature. So a lot of people ask me the question that आप नेशनल ज्योग्राफी क्यों नहीं ज्वाइन करते या आप डिस्कवरी में क्यों नहीं जाते. See, discovery, national geography, I just want to let everyone know that they work with the local teams. When they are shooting in India, they'll hire you, and the project in India is done, they'll go to other country, they'll pick up the local photographers from that country. They have a director's team, they have a production team and everything. But it is a project based thing. So we don't have that security, financial security when we're working with these big projects. So if we get it, it's an incentive. But we cannot be dependent on only as a source of earning.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. I would also like to acknowledge that we have Mr. Amit Mehra, Mr. Dinesh Khanna. I also see Prakash Tilokani, sir. Thank you for joining, and we are going to be hearing from you in the forthcoming sessions. But if you, Amit sir, Dinesh sir, if you have any question, Prakash sir, if you would like to just ask a question to Saurabh, I'm sure your question will be very much from the depth of photography. So it will be interesting for
Okay,
all the
I ask
participants.
a question as a follow-up to what Saurabh said.
Absolutely,
Hello,
sir.
sir.
Saurabh, congratulations for an excellent and very engaging presentation. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
One of the things which I've always, I have a few friends who are interested in wildlife photography, and the question which always comes up is that how much do you need to know about the habitat and the habits of the animal which you want to photograph, as opposed to only knowing photography? For instance, if I may just add as an analogy, do you really need to be sensitive to fashion and the trends to be a good fashion photographer? So,
Correct, sir.
what would you have to say about that?
Sir, you're absolutely bang on the point. If you want to make a good image, you should have absolute knowledge of the habitat you are visiting and the animals out there in the habitat. Say, for example, recently I made a visit to Tanzania. I completed 14 days just yesterday. I was quarantined in my home. So when I was in Tanzania, I had to understand that I'm visiting Tanzania in during the rain season. It was a monsoon there. But we visited Tanzania in monsoon because that is the time that every animal gives birth. All the wildebeest were giving birth. All the animals have their cubs and chicks. All the birds have their chicks. So we had more opportunities to shoot animals in green background because the whole Africa is generally turns into a yellow and grays when it is a summer out there. So I wanted some beautiful colors. So I visited that place in monsoon. But I have to be very sure about when it is monsoon, you have got lots of other issues. Your cars get can your car, your land cruisers can get stuck into the middle of the forest. You have to probably stay full night there. So not only this knowledge about the animal and the habitat, but in which season we are planning to visit that place. So perfect homework is required. People cannot go blindly into some places and get themselves into a trouble. So we have to have a perfect knowledge of wildlife and the habitat and the climatic and geographical conditions out there. So bang on that, it is very, very important. Equally important, how much you know about wildlife, you'll get more opportunities. See, so for example, simple example, a lot of people like to shoot birds in flight. When birds are flying, they want to shoot those animals, those moment. So they're very simple behavior of birds. Okay, when they poop, after immediately they'll start flying. They'll release the weight and they'll fly. So we find the perch with those white markings on the tree. If we see those white droppings out there, it means okay, the bird must be sitting here regularly because it is its permanent perch. So these kind of behavioral knowledge has to be there with all the photographers. That is what I was saying, that you have to be first nature lover. You should have adequate knowledge about nature and wildlife, and then you should go into the wildlife with all technical skill of photography. You will end up making good images. I mean,
Thank you.
yes, sir.
Thanks, Saurabh. Amit sir, Prakash sir, you want to go?
Do we have
Amit
I'll
sir,
just,
you have to
sorry.
unmute yourself. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
That's better.
Yeah. Hi,
I can
Saurabh.
listen
No,
to
I
Prakash
was
sir
just
and
saying,
Amit sir.
Namaskar, Fauzan sir. Namaskar, Dinesh sir. Namaskar, Sare sir. No, I was just saying, I'm just enjoying his presentation. Some lovely images out there. But one thing is just I want to comment that what he was talking about National Geographic, that they come from team to team, or I mean, they hunt for the local talent. Well, it's no more the case like that. There is a photographer here, Prasen. I'm sure you must be knowing.
Prasun Joshi, yeah, I know him.
No, Prasen Joshi nahi. Yadav, Prasen Yadav.
No, I don't know him. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, Prasen Yadav is a guy who had been working on the snow leopard, and you must see his work. He has been commissioned by the National Geographic, and he has
Okay.
been doing
uh, this snow leopard thing for the last 1 year. At the moment, also he is based there only. He has been living
Okay.
there only, and
Okay.
National Geographic is funding the whole project. So it's not about, and he is shot here in Kazakhstan, in
Correct.
Uzbekistan, many in Mongolia.
Right.
So
It is there.
that way, I think National Geographic has opened up their fund, and they're not only looking for local talent as from one spot to another. They've started assigning assignments
Yes, they
that way.
do start, sir. Actually, it is just a small. I mean, of course, you must be you're right about this. I mean, it is just that when they work in some project, after that project, I mean, there's always a question mark about the next project. So that was also my concern because I have to see the economical part of wildlife photography. That's it. So probably question must be
Well,
those. He must be one of
I
those
am
very
sure.
lucky people. Yeah, he must be
No,
very lucky if
I,
I get to work there.
yeah. No, economics works. Obviously, economics is always at the
Yeah,
back of the mind, and if you are a Gujarati, then
yes,
so
yes.
it has to be.
No, but thank you, sir. Thank you. And thanks for
But
Thank you,
joining
lovely
Amit
also,
work.
sir.
Amisha.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
Lovely work.
yeah, thank you, sir.
Prakash sir, any questions you would like to ask Saurabh or acknowledge his work?
Okay,
Kem cho Prakash bhai?
hi, Kencho sir. Congratulations, Saurabh. First of all, you and
Thank
F.Stop
you.
team for this wonderful, circle. Fine. So, just I wanted to ask one question to Baman. Is he there?
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
there.
he's there. He's there.
Okay. Yeah, just in a lighter way. I am a wedding photographer, and I wanted to start nature photography. So just I had something to ask that will this help me to do a better wedding photography, because now I am bored with people. I'm doing my wedding photography since
What will
now
help
40
you?
years.
I didn't understand the question actually,
Nature,
Prakash.
if I start doing
Nature.
nature
But why?
photography,
I think that question should be directed to the man of the hour.
will
I think the man of the hour will answer that question even
no
better,
no
because unfortunately, I am not in a
uh,
position to get married this time of the year or maybe in the coming future.
and
So,
just I want
but
to make
honestly, the
fun.
man
Just
of the
that's why.
hour will tell you, and I can understand. Everybody goes through periods. I can say it, give you the answer from the perspective of an actor from this point of time. Uh, well, I did theater for 14 years. I tried to, learn as much as I could from theater, and then I joined films. And now I'm in the process of turning into director. Every single one of us wants to shift a gear at some point in our lives. And
Right.
there's nothing wrong with that. And if you say that you're tired of, yeah, why not? Why not explore? The point I'll make, and probably uh, our good man, the man of the hour, will answer it even better than I do. The the thing is, we must be careful of what we shift into without having the knowledge of the subject. And I think that's very, very, very important, because Patrick Eager, the great cricket photographer, had said that, well, the first thing that the title was Know Your Subject. He couldn't go and shoot American baseball, but he knows his subject. He knows cricket, and that's why he knows how to preempt a shot. Like he was talking about the bird droppings earlier on. So unless and until, if you're bored with what you're doing, but you're jumping onto something else only out of boredom, then I think it's very important to know your subject well. I have been in the process, for example, I'll talk about it. Tomorrow's my session, and that's why I don't want to talk too much right now. I've taken 7 years to write one script, because I may have 100 films of experience as an actor, but I don't know the subject of writing till I understand that subject. That's all I will say for the time being. We'll talk a little tomorrow. In all fairness,
Yep.
man of the hour, sir, would you answer that question? I think it's a very good question. It's a very pertinent question. People get bored of their
Yes,
subject.
Saurabh, you can reply.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Saurabh, go ahead, answer it. I spoke too
Uh,
much. I should not have, but
no, 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 absolutely fine, sir. We are enjoying when you're talking, sir. So, Prakash sir, actually, honestly, I mean, to be frank, I also have a company called 50 Media Production, and we do shoot fashion and weddings and all those stuff. But it is just that I have had people who have adequate knowledge about wedding and fashion rather than doing it by myself. And I've been seeing your work. And by the way, I'm a big fan of you, Prakash sir. I mean, I
Oh,
just wanted to tell you this.
thank
Yeah,
you.
I've been watching your work. So it is just what Baman sir has rightly said, that even if you are getting bored of some subject, and if you want to get into something else, I mean, I don't shoot fashion honestly because I don't shoot it myself because I don't have enough knowledge about the fashion, the coming trends, what the expert photographers probably have it in their mind. And that is why I generally refrain shooting by myself. I mean, so I try to pick up project more into wildlife and execute it. And from the company, I hire a people who knows better than me, and I make them work for me. I mean, that is how I have been working. And luckily, I'm still not very bored out of this wildlife photography. Luckily, so I've been continuing it since last 20 years by now.
Yeah, thank you.
I just,
Rahul is there, yeah.
I'm Rahul, by the way, Prakashji's
Hi,
son.
Rahul.
It was
Yeah.
lovely. The presentation was really lovely. I just wanted to make a note that, no matter how much preparation we do in weddings, our subjects never, we never get that perfect frame in terms of planning. No matter how
Yeah,
much you
yeah,
plan, at the end, things are completely different. So,
yeah.
yes, definitely.
So in that way, this wildlife photography will help us.
But see, wedding and wildlife is almost same. In wedding also there is
Yeah,
a prey and predator, right? In
right.
wildlife also there is prey and predator. So in
right.
wildlife also you miss the opportunity. They go run out of the frame. In wedding also they run out of the frame.
Right, 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 right.
True,
So
true,
it is
true.
more or less same. The technical skill which is required for wedding and wildlife
Right.
probably is the same, I guess.
Right.
I can give you one example. Sometimes what happens, like bride gets us, make us, waiting for 2 hours, 3 hours to get, good portraits while she's getting ready. And after completing, her this thing, and she says she just denies us and oh sorry we are running late.
Yeah.
So sorry we cannot. So this is I think this is
I think,
same thing we
And
this,
most of the time in wedding we are running late.
yeah,
In
yeah.
most
So, and
weddings, they are always running late. It happens with this thing also
yeah,
in wildlife also, sir. See,
yeah,
in
that's why I'm asking.
last time we were in Kenya, there were two male lions were sleeping on the open ground. There was a golden light. So we
no, no,
reached there
no,
at
no,
morning
no.
8:30, and we kept on waiting those two lions to wake up till evening 6:30. By 6:30 we were supposed to come back to the camp. They both of them, they just, by the way, lions are the sixth most laziest animals on this earth. So so many times it happens that they don't wake up at all. So we were there 10 hours watching two sleeping lions in a grass. So
Right.
it very often that it happens that we kept on waiting and we don't come up with
Get
good
them,
images at all.
right,
Although
right,
the subject was there.
right.
So in that way, I'm sure that I will get good pictures
In
when I'm
wildlife.
trying for wildlife photography also.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. You
Thank
will.
you,
Thank you so
Saurabh.
much.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Prakash sir. Thanks, Saurabh, and thanks, Roman sir, for chipping in. Now I'll just move on to the participant questions because I do have a plenty, but we'll just time it to a hard stop at 5:30 if that's okay with everybody. I think 15 minutes more we'll just give to the participant questions. I'll
Yep.
start the first, which I thought is very much in line with what we've been discussing, and it's from Abhinav Sa. So Abhinav, if you could just come on the video and say hi to Saurabh, he can see who you are.
Okay.
Abhinav? Yeah, that's Abhinav.
Yeah. Okay.
Fazan sir, Baman sir, everyone. So this is in continuation with what
Abhinav, I'll just
Fazan.
ask a question. I have a question. I'll just
Yeah,
ask it. Just one
yeah.
second. Yeah? So what Abhinav wanted to ask is, for a newcomer, how does one critique his or her work? Isn't it very easy to get influenced by what's around on the internet? And how does one understand and break the rules and be different? Abhinav, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, we are living in the age of instant gratification, as in we keep seeing Instagram and we get influenced by how many likes are coming to an image. So for a newcomer to just differentiate what's good and bad, isn't it difficult in the current age? As in, so how
See,
do you
for
critique
that,
your own images?
see, honestly, there's a very big topic because it is very important what kind of people you are following and what kind of comments you are getting from what kind of people. See, I often call that we are living and we have been watching things in a visual pollution era. There are a lot of visual pollution on internet. I mean, you see one good image and there are 10 scrap images are there. So when we are scrolling up and down, so generally I have a tendency, if I find some good image, I'll go into his profile, I'll go through his all set of images and then only I'll follow the photographer. I mean, so yes, that visual pollution is there and it does affect your vision also. See, when I was talking about post-production, a lot of people process the images as if some Hollywood movie climax is going on. The wildlife images looks like the movie thriller movie. That is how they process. And they get 2000 comments and all the newcomers will understand, okay, this is the milestone I have to process like this. So this is the problem with internet era. So it is very important that what kind of people are following your work and you are following what kind of people. So you should not go with the number of comments. You should think about who is commenting my images rather than how many comments or likes we are getting. So it is very important to follow the correct set of people, I guess. It is very important because when it comes likes and comment, it is more like you scratch my back, I scratch your back. I mean, aapne mere pe comment kiya, I'll comment it on you.
Yeah.
So follow correct set of people and correct and go to their website, read about the photographer, read about the philosophy of the photographer, rather than just double clicking on their images. I mean, read about what he is putting in words. I think a lot of followers, I mean, when I get the PM, कि भाई ये photo कैसे खींचा, वो photo कैसे, they have not gone through the artist statement at all on my website. So we should go to, if somebody has a website, go to the website, read about his blogs or what the artist statement that he has put up there. So that is how you should follow the things other than, okay, Instagram is good to reach the people out there. But I mean, following has to be more serious. There are more serious forums for particularly this creative-nature-photography.net is there. In that, there are only 700 photographers in last 10 years. And to get into creative-nature-photography.net, you have to send your portfolio. If your portfolio is approved, then only you will be the member of this forum. And there, they have the best way. What they have done is they have put up a blog. They have posted 100 images, and last slide they have put it, okay, is tarah ka kaam post mat kare. Do not post this kind of images because this is creative nature photography forum. So you have to get into correct set of forums and you have to follow correct set of people. I guess it would help you.
Yeah. I think
And
Burman sir,
probably there are a lot of other people who will be able to throw some more light. I mean, a lot of other guys who can talk about this, I guess.
yeah, I think it's valid for all form of creative fields then to
Yeah,
be
exactly.
around the
That's
good
why.
set of people. Yeah. Just a request to the organizers quickly, if these things can be put up in a forum for F-Stops for people to follow each genre of photography, what you guys are going to talk about in the next 21 days.
Yeah, we'll be doing that.
Like a database of people to follow. Maybe. Yeah. Thank
Thanks,
you so
Abhinav.
much. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Saurabh. I have an interesting question from a young photographer from Pune. The name is Sia Bhagat. And what I get from the name is probably she's a girl. Sia, are you there on the call? Yeah, that's Sia.
I can see
So
her.
just
Yeah.
say hi to Abhinav. Her question is that she has made you a mentor without a permission, so she's sorry for that. People usually, so this is more like an ethical question, and that's why it's very interesting. People usually disturb the wildlife to get the good pictures, and she doesn't find it right at all. And she wanted to know if you have met any of these kind of people who have done this while you were with them on the field.
Okay.
Good
So,
question.
Sia, you want to add something to it?
No, I'm just glad that you're answering my question.
Oh, thank you, Sia. So, Sia, first of all, we have to understand that every photographer entering the forest is disturbing the forest. That is bottom line. Everybody, there is more or less. Okay. Second thing, the ethical part of doing wildlife photography. Yes, there are a lot of unethical practices have been going on. When even we are there in the forest, we notice certain things. All we do is we try to at least tell them that, okay, this is not supposed to be done, and this is not the right way of doing it. the very first concern of every wildlife photographer is not to disturb wildlife at all. See, I just spoke about the two lions were sleeping in Kenya, right?
Yeah.
So point is, a lot of people would try to run their gypsies very close by so they'll wake up.
Hmm.
And we also could have got the images. थोड़ा land cruiser को नजदीक से लेके जाएंगे, they'll wake up and we'll be able to make good images. But we did not do that. We did not do that. We let them sleep. Even it was 6:30 and it was time for us to return back. We did not get good images, but we did not disturb them. Okay, that is first thing. Lot of people I have seen, they go to the wetlands and they try to hit the stones to the bird because they want to shoot birds in flight.
Yeah.
तो bird उड़ कैसे नहीं रहा है, तो उसको उड़ाते हैं. They throw the stones. But sir, this all is happening nowadays. It is because they are not nature lovers. They are just technically photographers. So if you don't love nature, if you're not in love with the nature, you probably end up doing all these things. So those all who are watching this video, I request all of them that first concern is not to disturb the nature by any means. Okay, we are disturbing at some, or we cannot say that nahi, humne to 0% disturbance is there. No, we do disturb. Even sometimes unknowingly we disturb.
Yeah.
Okay, so we always have that, have
We
it in
use
the
mobile
back of our
phones.
mind. Yeah. Right.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sia.
Welcome. Welcome.
Thanks, Saurabh. Saurabh, the other question that I have, and I want to pick that question, is because you said you've been in this line of work for about 20 years, right?
Yes. Yes.
So a question from Raj Mehta, and he asks that how to be patient in starting your work, and how did you handle your mental health with the work in the starting years?
Okay.
So probably somebody who's starting out, you've had a long journey. If you can tell them
Yeah.
how you coped up with the initial years.
See, honestly, Raj, initial words were quite easy compared to the scenario today. That is a very honest answer, because when I started doing wildlife in 98, 99, that time nobody had those, I mean, there were very few people who had this 300, 400 millimeter lenses and all. So whatever we used to get used to be a good picture. Even if, I mean, it has to be a lion or tiger or anything, and people would have, wow, what a good picture it is. But nowadays, when there are equipments available where you can get very sharp images and a lot of other possibilities are there with the equipments, you have to struggle to make good images. So that mental health is probably, we have to think more about in today's scenario than the scenario we had in our past. Correct. Because today we have to prove ourselves, and sometimes we get some good images with mobile phones also. Okay, so mental health is very important, right? See, I talk about the snow leopard expeditions. I tried snow leopard in 2017. We were there for 18 days. The temperature used to be minus 25. The altitude used to be 14,000 to 18,000 feet. We used to climb every day. Correct. Every day we used to walk in freezing temperature on frozen rivers and all. For 18 days, we kept on walking into the Hemis National Park in Ladakh region. Can you believe we did not see the glimpse of snow leopard? And in that, when the oxygen is very low, your mental health is very weak. कोई नजदीक से भी चला जाता है तो बोलते हैं दूर से नहीं जा सकता है, like that sort of irritation is there in mind. But you have to come over it. You should have habit of listening to music or reading books or something which gives you a good time with your own thing. Then again, I tried snow leopard in 2018 for another 18 days. Can you believe I did not see a glimpse of snow leopard in 2018 also? And the first time I got to see snow leopard was after 3 years in 2019, which was last year in Spiti when we did the expedition. So, and that time we were very happy, and we got to see 20 sightings of snow leopard in 20 days. So sometimes your mental health is very important. But if you love nature and if you love being there in the habitat, probably you will not get irritated much. But if you have such habits, you should try to do music, listen to music or read books or something like that. It will help you when you're there in the field.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, thanks.
Yes, sir.
And Saurabh, I think we have just time enough for maybe
Yes,
one or maximum two last two
correct. Correct.
questions.
I'll be quick in that. Yeah.
I want to just ask a question. This is from Jay Pathak. And the question is,
Yeah.
how do you select photos for a competition like HIPAA?
HIPAA. Okay. So he must be talking in concern. I mean, in regards to the award I won in HIPAA, probably. Okay.
Probably
So
yes.
HIPAA, yeah. So if you're talking about HIPAA, every year HIPAA is basically International Wildlife. It is not an international wildlife photography award competition. A lot of you, I mean, must be knowing about HIPAA. So see, that time they had a theme of black and white also. The theme was challenge, and another category was black and white photography. So in that, one of my lion image, which was in black and white, I submitted. We saw that image, and lion was sitting inside the bush with surrounded by all the trees in black and white. That image won in HIPAA. Okay, but guys, HIPAA, I had no idea. I was just like somebody told me about HIPAA, and I thought, yes, I have a couple of few black and white images which I can submit in HIPAA. Honestly, I had no word. But when we submit images for BBC Wildlife Photographer of the Year, or Sanctuary Asia Wildlife Photographer of the Year, or Nature in Focus Wildlife Photographer of the Year, we know the trend because we have been following this kind of awards since probably 10-15 years. So we know the judges, those, I mean, we follow the work posted by judges, and we know their mindset, and we submit the images according to them. But in HIPAA, honestly, it wasn't decided. I thought, oh, chalo, black and white, hai, let's post it. Nothing else.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank
That's
you,
it.
Jay. Saurabh, we have a few questions which are technical in nature, asking about camera settings or what DSLR and all. I'm just kind of skipping those
Correct.
for other
Yeah.
questions
Yes.
which
Yes. Yes.
are
Yes.
more towards the
Correct.
creative stuff. So there was one question: is what kind of a challenge do you face when you're in the field? Maybe one instance or some example, and how do you take care of your expensive equipment? I believe that would be done by insurance, but that's a question from Bhumika. So I think the first part of the question is interesting: is what kind of a challenge can one face in wildlife photography?
See, challenge, when it comes to challenge, there are many challenges. Uh, the tourism which has increased nowadays is the biggest challenge for us. Say, for example, after this Gujarat tourism campaign, when we used to go to Gir forest, it used to be very few gypsies in the forest, very few. Driver's guide used to be very free, and जब हम लोग जाते तो भाग के आते थे, sir मेरी गाड़ी में आओ, मेरी गाड़ी में आओ. But nowadays we don't get bookings at all. So that tourism, initially it used to be like wildlife photographer, a wildlife enthusiast and nature lover used to go to the places in wildlife. Other people used to go to the tourist places and all. But now that it has gone mixed up. So every single tourist are going into wildlife destination also. Probably the biggest challenge for us. Correct. So to extra, I mean, over tourism is a challenge. Another challenge for us is the mostly climate and habitat. So when we are shooting in Himalayas, the biggest challenge that we face is altitude. Altitude. See, when I'm saying 14,000 to 18,000 feet, at 14,000 feet there is only 60% oxygen, and 18,000 feet is only 50% oxygen. So walking 50 steps itself is a challenge. And in such condition, when the temperature is really very low, I mean, a lot of people, those who have a lot of money to pay for their, or for those who can pay for their porters, they hire porters. But people like me, we carry our own load. So in that, you have to be physically very fit. So if you are planning your trips, you have to start preparing for that for 6 months from that day of when you are planning it. So we do take care of our physical fitness when we are planning such trips. Otherwise, I have seen a lot of people coming to Spiti, they end up having high altitude sickness, and they have to go back to their base camps, and they cannot shoot animals at all. So another challenge, and another thing you ask, how do we take care of our equipments? See, we really need to take a very good care of our equipment. We have to understand that when we come back to the base camp, every day we clean our equipment. we make sure before putting, I mean, very simple step. When we keep the batteries and everything on for charging, we make sure there is no unwanted current passing through the chargers. Because if your charger is gone, your full trip is gone. Very simple thing. So we try and see the charging is happening okay. Then we use those plug points and all. The very small things we have to take care, but we do very good care of our equipment. I mean, honestly.
Thank you, Saurabh.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Bhumika. Before I hand it over to Vinay, I just like to acknowledge and welcome one of our other very good friends, Amit Asher. Amit, if you would just like to start your camera and say hello to everybody. Amit has been a
Okay,
great supporter of F.Stop, and we love to see him here.
I'm trying to connect the video.
Or maybe you're just trying to put on a t-shirt.
No, I tried.
Okay.
I framed myself otherwise. Hi, everyone.
Hi,
Hello,
Sorry I
Amit
hi.
couldn't
sir.
join in earlier. My little
Hello.
baby was in a very playful mood. And, in these times, it's
Yeah,
uh, just us, no one else.
absolutely.
So
Thank you
had
for
to be with
joining
her.
in.
Thank you to her that I could, she went to sleep so I could join you guys. The little bit that I caught was wonderful. Hi, Baman. Hi, Dinesh, Pavdan Bhai, all of you. Yeah, it's so nice. F-Stop, hats off to you guys for having started such a wonderful initiative.